I want to talk today about regeneration, growth, evolution, this process of movement and becoming that is so essential to the experience of life. This is a follow-up to the video that I published last week, offering up the theological foundations of the Helen Keller Spiritual Life Collaborative and naming them to be this foundational understanding that we are one unified thing, one unified life, one love that manifests in many different forms, and that our calling in life is to be that, and that be love, be honest, be useful is a way of framing and naming what it is to be what we are, what it is to be in alignment of the truth, the life that we are. And an essential element of understanding that process of being who we are is to understand that each of us is engaged in a process of growth, of regeneration, of evolution, of change. Each one of us individually, and then as a species, as a planet, this process of life, of growth, of change is inherent to the experience of being here and being alive. And maybe that seems a little obvious, unnecessary to name, but I think it's actually essential to name and essential to bring that knowing of knowing that we are in a constant experience of change and transformation into our moment-to-moment, day-to-day living and approach to life. We form something called the Helen Keller Spiritual Life Collaborative. We form spiritual community not for the purpose of being a static entity that kind of stands for all time or establishes a sense of stability or security in the planet. But we gather in spiritual community, we gather in love for the purpose of nurturing one another through these processes of change. You certainly hear this in the message that Jesus proclaimed to his disciples and that he proclaimed to those during his lifetime. We are here to be born again, to be born of the Spirit, that is why we exist. We don't exist to remain static. And again, it sort of seems a little bit obvious, none of us is static from one moment to the next, let alone one day to the next or 1 year to the next. We're all constantly changing. And yet, because of the way our brains operate, we have a tendency, at least I know I have a tendency, and I wonder if you have a tendency, to be surprised by change, to be taken off guard by the change that beckons us, or the change that kind of sometimes seems to come out of nowhere. Does that happen to you? Are you like me, where somehow the way our brains operate or the way we are taught or something, where you sometimes feel that we are supposed to be kind of a static entity, a finished product, something that is one way for all time? Do you sometimes fall into that belief that if you were, doing better, or if you were somehow a better human being, you would be more solid? You would know yourself more as a more of a finished product as an individual? Or perhaps you have this perception of organizations that you're involved in, that organization would be, if you were all doing a better job, that it would be more stable, more solid, more more something. It certainly seems like a lot of us on this planet right now long for institutional stability. We long for things to be predictable or something that is familiar from one day to the next. I wonder if you feel this way sometimes about your family. Perhaps you have this ideal that your family should be operating in a certain way, or that people should be communicating in a certain way or showing up in a certain way, and that if everybody was kind of pulling their weight or doing it the right way, that there would be a sense of stability and finishedness amongst your family. My sense is we fall into these traps. And not only do we fall into them, but some of us operate with these understandings kind of all of the time, that things should be a certain way, and if they were, then life would be good. And I wonder if, as I say those words, you recognize in yourself how you sometimes perceive life that way, and if you can also kind of laugh with me for a minute at how ridiculous that suggestion is. There's no finished in this life. There's no end point. If there is an end point, if there is a finished, usually that is a moment of death or stagnation. It's a moment that is frozen in time, and in that way it's not alive. Everything that is alive is changing, is growing. And we're in springtime here on the East Coast in the United States, and everything is bursting forth. And it's beautiful. And it is a process that is unfolding, that will be here for a time, and then it will move into another process. And the reality is, all of us, because we are living beings, are more than we are static entities. We are processes of change and growth. And that change and growth, just like the flowers outside, the daffodils in my yard, the buds that are bursting forth, this process of growth that is happening inside of us and of all living things is not in our control. It is not in our control. Our bodies are changing every day. Our earth is changing every day. And that change, that growth, is not something that we manage. I can make choices about what food I put into my body and what I drink. And I can feel or believe that those choices have an effect on kind of how my body grows, certainly. And we humans have gotten pretty good at kind of manipulating our bodies and creating different body shapes. So we do have some degree of control over some aspects of our body's functioning. But the large majority of what is going on inside of us is outside of our control. And that is true on a physical level. And it is also true on a spiritual level. This process that we call regeneration, this process that we call spiritual rebirth that Jesus spoke of. And it's very important, from my perspective, for us to start to bring that truth, that reality that we are being grown all the time by a power greater than ourselves, into how we approach each moment, how we approach each other, how we approach our life. That when you do that, when you start to see this real truth and then operate from that truth every day, my suggestion is that is going to help us to have healthier, wiser, more loving, more real experiences of community, of life, and of one another. My sense is a lot of the suffering on this planet is because of this faulty view that there is a finished that we could all arrive at if we just did all the right things and followed the right steps. That there's a false belief that we can control this process of growth and kind of Make sure that it's moving in the right direction in a steady way that is going to, benefit the whole in the right way. We know things are growing, we know systems grow and change, and yet we have kind of a faulty sense, I think, of our role in that and how much control we have over that. We see this in the world right now with all of our kind of false assumptions about economic growth, that it can just keep going in one direction in this linear way, and if we just do all the right things, it will just keep moving forward, pacing on, unlimited growth. Go, go, go. Not realizing that growth and change, evolution, regeneration, it's not in our control. And it is not just a linear process. It is a spiral that goes through cycles and seasons of growth and of death, of opening up and of contracting, of taking on and of letting go. And it's an organic process that we can start to witness, and a lot of wise people on this planet right now are kind of looking at history and looking at the flow of things and kind of drawing conclusions and gaining insights into the the rise and fall of civilizations, the rise and fall of different religious communities and ways of understanding and knowing. I mean, it's fascinating, and we can learn a lot from our history. But all that learning is not going to give us the keys to control the process. And it is definitely not going to give us the keys to being able to control the process so that we can have some kind of fixed reality that will never surprise us again, or that will give us this never-ending feeling of stability and security. It is a flow, friends. It is a movement. And the only way to find any manner of stability is to go with the flow. Kind of get comfortable floating. Be willing as you go along to let go and to move into new territory. And I really feel deeply that this is what the spiritual life calls for. And this Helen Keller Spiritual Life Collaborative that we are forming is about being in community where we name this and we know this, and we don't treat each other as finished products that we know and can contain, but as beings in a process of evolution. And we celebrate the change, and we help each other to grieve the losses, and we help each other to navigate new terrain and the feelings of fear and uncertainty that go along with that. Where we look at the systems that we're involved in, and we wonder about the ways those systems are being called to change, things that we're letting go of and the things that we're stepping into. And we don't allow ourselves to be fooled into thinking that the way things are now is the way that they always will be. That is absurd. We are here to grow. We're here to be. We're here first to be love. And then we're here to be in alignment with the truth of who we are. And the truth of who we are is not a static entity. The truth of who we are is a continually changing, evolving beingness that is constantly in a process of letting go and of moving into new territory all the time, sometimes faster than other times. Sometimes there are big thresholds we have to step through. Other times we maybe are floating along and it's a little slower, steadier pace. But it doesn't stop. If it stops, then it's over. Then the journey is done. That is what Emanuel Swedenborg calls spiritual death. That stagnation is actually a real spiritual death. That's what creates these eddies that we call hell. When we think it's always going to be this one way and we're going to get our joy from this one thing, and then we just become fixated on this one state of being. And this is how we create hellish experiences and states. So we have that choice. We can choose that. I don't want to choose that. I don't want to create spiritual community that chooses that. And I think one of the foundations of this new endeavor that I'm trying to create is for us to know that we have that temptation, and to learn to notice it and to step out of it and to get back into the stream, back into the flow, and find a way, hopefully, to kind of maybe hitch up our rafts together so that we don't have to go on this journey alone. And sometimes, sit up on the shore and kind of watch it go by for a little bit and wonder about it. We are processes. We are growing beings. We are being grown by God, and that is a good thing. It is not something to be afraid of. It is not something to try to deny or control. And unfortunately, I think for too long we have tried to deny it and control it. So, as I mentioned in my last video, a next step for the collaborative is we're going to be doing first a week-long series and then a multi-year series traveling through the 7 days of creation as a way of thinking about these stages of our regeneration, of our growth, of our journey along this path of life. Because there are stages that wise ones long before us have seen and noticed and witnessed. And we learn about these stages not so we can try to control what's going on, not because by learning about them we'll be able to make our way step by step, because this is not an intellectual process. But we learn about them, we gather around these stages so that we can start to notice what's happening inside. We can begin to have language to talk about it with each other and write about it and dance about it and draw and paint about it. I pray that going on this journey together will be a way to be in community, in process, in an experience of change, really explicitly. Because the Helen Keller Spiritual Life Collaborative is not just another church, another congregation that's going to be static for all time. We are a collaborative of human beings coming together in the process of growth to support one another and to nurture new life, to be in alignment with this flow of life that we're all a part of. And I'm really excited for what it'll be like to go on this journey, and I really hope you'll come along. So stay tuned. I'm getting ready to start recording that first week-long series very soon with some fabulous other humans. The Reverend Lee Woofenden, the Reverend Sue Turley, the Reverend Kent Rogers, and the Reverend Catherine Lauber have all agreed to be a part of this first week-long series. And then I hope so many more people will come and be a part, and more information will be unfolding soon about how you can join in. But for now, I hope this message speaks to you, and I hope it speaks to you to understand yourself in this way, as a constantly evolving bit of life on this planet, with the incredible opportunity to be here with others as you are, constantly opening into new vistas and new possibilities. It's scary to our brains, but it's a true adventure for our souls, and I hope you won't miss it. All right, blessings, friends.